again for tuning in to my channel on Pre-Med Pep Talk. I promised you guys that after I read the book on how to study in medical school that I will bring you guys a review. So I apologize that it took so long, but I'm here to do the review and tell you guys what I learned and how much I like this book. By the way, I really like this book. So let's jump right into it. First thing that he talks about, the author in the book, is the importance of taking notes. And I know you're probably thinking like, well, duh, of course I'm going to take notes in med school. Right, but he talks about how important it is to actively study and to actively take notes. And so what he meant by that is you should go to class. He doesn't recommend skipping classes unless you're one of those people who can't concentrate in class during lecture. But if that's not you, then he recommends going to class, taking notes in class, writing down the important information that your professor tells you. And then after class, making sure that you take notes actively on all of the lectures that you had during the day. So by taking notes, he's saying that you should only be writing down the things that you could possibly forget. So you shouldn't write down the obvious material. Only write down the things that, one, you think you will be tested on, two, you think you could possibly see on your step one in the long run, and three, things that you will forget. So I really like that because I know sometimes I'll take notes on the obvious thing like X equals Z. Well, it's more than likely that I'll remember that X equals Z. So I'll give you a real life scenario. So say for instance you're in pharmacology and you're learning about antihypertensive medications. So if one of the drugs you need to remember is losartan. Losartan is an angiotensin receptor blocker, right? In your notes, you wouldn't write down losartan, angiotensin receptor blocker. What you would write down is losartan works via the renin-angiotensin mechanism, because there's a high chance that you'll forget what mechanism losartan works by in the body, but you'll probably remember that it's an antihypertensive. So what he meant was that if you write down the things that are less obvious, when you're on the test, it'll be easier for you to remember what type of drug class losartan falls into if you could remember the mechanism, because that's what was in your notes. I hope that made sense. That was my personal example. It wasn't one that he gave. So yeah, taking notes is his top recommendation, and actively taking those notes. Next, when you're taking notes, he suggested that you always ask why. So if you're, once again, back to pharmacology, if you're studying drug classes, ask why this acts versus this way. Ask why, this happens versus this happened, why it goes through this blood vessel versus that blood vessel. What's significant about it? And if your notes or your book can't provide that answer, then look it up. Use the internet, use Google, use YouTube. We have so many resources now where you don't have to rely on just your textbook or your professor's lecture notes. So those were two things as well. Make sure that you look up information, because if you look it up and you dig deeper, it's 9 times out of 10 that you'll remember that material for the exam. And if you ask the question why, if something is going to click in your mind when you're reading those multiple choice multiple choice answer, to say, hey, I looked that up, and on my notes, I told myself that this is why this happens. Let me give you one of his examples on how to ask why, because he gave some really good examples. All right, so for instance, if you're in biochemistry, you should not write down, don't give glucose to hypoglycemic alcoholic. What you should write down in your notes is, don't give a hypoglycemic alcoholic glucose because the buildup of NADH further pushes pyruvate towards lactic acid. You asked the why. You provided the why you shouldn't give glucose to a hypoglycemic alcoholic. I hope that makes sense. When I read it, I was like, okay, wow, I never did this when it came to note-taking in grad school and in undergrad. So that's something that I definitely want to incorporate moving forward when I go to medical school. Also, he said, ask questions in your notes. Turn your notes into questions. So instead of that open-ended statement, it's great that you have the why in there, but turn it into a question. Instead of saying, don't give a hypoglycemic alcoholic glucose, say, why should you not give a hypoglycemic alcoholic glucose? Or true or false, you should not give a hypoglycemic alcoholic glucose. So it'll help you get into the mindset of answering questions for your exam, because let's face it, when we get in medical school, we're going to be answering questions for the rest of our lives. Something else he talked about that I wasn't too fond about was sacrificing sleep. I love my sleep. But I understand that as I move forward in this journey, sleep is going to be something that is going to be a distant memory. But he did say, he recommended that you stay up as long as it takes to finish taking notes, actively taking notes for that day's lecture, and to do that every day, Monday through Friday, so that when you get to the weekend, you're not still trying to catch up and take notes on the material from the week. You're actually having time to go to the library with your notes and study the material that you wrote down in your notes. He also says that when you go to the library to study on the weekend, if you've done everything that he recommended throughout the week, staying on top of things, then you should only be carrying your notes to the library or wherever you study to study, because you're only writing down things that you think you will be tested on. So there's no need to bring your books, your lecture material, anything like that, because those are only extra details that will bombard your mind with things that you don't really need, because you've already extracted the information that you feel you will be tested on for your exam. Now, of course, this is going to take practice. It's going to take practice to take notes correctly, to learn what type of questions your professor will ask, to learn how that professor will test you on the material. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. Okay, something else that he suggested is to use mnemonics. Now, I'm sure y'all all use mnemonics. I know I use them. If you don't, mnemonics are amazing. They really help you remember things that are, rather difficult to remember. And so he basically said the more dirtier, the more inappropriate, the more weird your mnemonic is, the more likely you are to remember it, which is very true, because there are some really dirty mnemonics out there for science. So definitely utilize mnemonics. That's something that'll probably help you throughout your medical school career. And as far as study groups, I know a lot of us like study groups. I learned that study groups work really well for me, but he suggested that you use study groups only if you are a person that benefits from study groups, and only if you have a group of individuals that you vibe with, that you guys are on the same type of path and you have the same learning style and you're actually getting things accomplished. He did recommend that you actively study and write your notes first before you engage with your study group, because you've already seen the material once. You're just testing each other when it comes to study groups. And then the last thing he suggested is balance. Balance is something that I know many medical students, pre-medical students, students that are studying anything science related, we all struggle with. I know I struggle with it. I will be the first to admit that balance is hard, because you want to do well. You want to pass your exams. So, of course, you're going to study your butt off until you feel like you know all the material. But what I've heard from medical students time and time again is that you get so much information bombarded on you in medical school that there's no way that you can learn everything. You only have time to learn a certain amount of things for that exam, and so you have to have some type of balance. So he encouraged you to, after you follow this strict schedule of staying up as late as possible and taking notes, making sure that you're staying on top of taking notes, to take the weekend to, of course, study and review your material, but also take some time for yourself to relax, to unwind, to let your brain rest a little, and take breaks throughout studying, because as a human, you only can retain so much information at a time. Those are the main takeaways that I got from the book. It was so great, guys. I encourage you to purchase it. I'm not sponsored by this guy, so I won't get any of the proceeds if you do buy it, but it was a really great book. If you guys think that you liked it and you like this review, definitely give it a thumbs up. subscribe to our channel. There'll be more book reviews. There'll be more Testimony Tuesdays. There'll be more tips and encouraging things for pre-med and pre-health professional students. So definitely subscribe to our channel. Follow me at Pre-Med Pep Talk on Instagram. And I'm thinking about doing a giveaway with this book because I read it. I don't really need it anymore. And if I do, I'll order it again because it wasn't that expensive. So if you want me to do a giveaway, give this video a thumbs up and write in the comments below that you want me to do a giveaway with this book, and I'll definitely make sure that I do it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope you liked what I had to say and that you'll order the book for yourself and see for yourself. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.